Hi, welcome back to Bounce Forward with me, Tiff Hall. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which I'm recording this podcast, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. I pay my respects to elders past and present. Today on the show, I'm joined by Brooke Turner. Brooke is a renowned expert and educator in the health and fitness industry, specialising in functional fitness for females with over 15 years of experience. Hi, Brooke. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Tiff.
There's a lot of confusion about heart rate. Is that outdated?
Yeah, it is. There's the general rule of thumb, anywhere between 120 to 150 beats per minute is considered, safe for pregnancy. And I don't like to use the word safe. I don't believe there is safe or unsafe exercise. I believe, is it suitable or is there a more appropriate alternative? And when it comes down to heart rate, I like to use, and so many people train with fitness devices these days. So if you're listening and you have a heart rate tracker, like I've trained with one for over 10 years, so I know my zones and where I should be reaching.
Yes.
Working out your percentages of your heart rate max is a much more effective way to measure your intensity of exercise. So you could use the talk test or that rate of perceived exertion, like a scale of 1 to 10, how hard's that effort? But the figure would be to do 220, take away your age. And that figure, if you do that calculation, that gives you your heart rate max. And that would be your maximum heart rate. You can only perform exercise at that effort for very short bouts of time. And then if you work out percentages of that, so times that by 0.4 to get 40% of it, or times it by 0.6 or 0.8, and then that gives you some heart rate zones to work towards.
Yeah, that's excellent.
So if you're a well-trained individual, you have a healthy low-risk pregnancy, you can push that to, 75, 80% of your heart rate max. This is very generalist information.
Yes.
But then if you had more of a complicated pregnancy or you're new to working out, you'd stick with, anywhere between 60% and below for your heart rate max during pregnancy. So it is very individual, but if you can perform that calculation, that's my preferred method to make sure that we're working within an appropriate intensity. Yeah.
That's excellent. And I just think it's so important for women to not be afraid to move when they're pregnant. It's so important for the mother and for the baby. But I felt really scared. And then when I started, I was working with a postnatal trainer and they were qualified and they were fantastic. And like you said, a trainer needs a trainer, and I just needed that confidence. But we'd start out and it was just so conservative. I felt, like you say, sitting on a fit ball, getting some feedback, lifting light weights. You can push it a little bit, can't you, if you're listening to your body, because labor is quite intense. And I thought all the while I was training during my pregnancy, I was thinking, gosh, I'm training for a big event here. Like my heart rate's going to go through the roof during labor. It's going to be one of the biggest athletic experiences of my life. So you can push it a little bit. You don't have to be too timid, do you, if you're working with a professional?
Yeah, and that's the thing. So you can keep going, one-on-one or online or your group fitness sessions. It's about, my key piece of advice is that if during pregnancy and those early postpartum months, is that you're better off walking away from all of your workouts thinking that you could have done more rather than thinking that you've actually overdone it.
That's great. Yes.
So, and it becomes like pregnancy is as much of a physical adjustment as it is a mental adjustment, particularly for women who, are well-trained or everyday lifestyle athletes, because ego gets in the way.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I know that I can do this or I want to do that. And even the dialogue that we use as coaches, it's like, well, take this option if you need it. And if someone goes, well, I don't need it, and if I take it, people think I'm taking an easier option. So, yeah, just walk away, never give anything 100% during pregnancy. You want to walk away thinking, you know what, I had more left in the tank there.
Yeah, that's excellent advice.
And in terms of HIIT, you can still get that heart rate up and then recover it, but you just need to be mindful of
longer recovery periods, perhaps.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Brooke, what about women who have a C-section and pelvic floor?
Yes. So a common myth is, if I have a C-section, then I am not at risk of having urinary incontinence or prolapse or any sort of pelvic floor dysfunction. And that's one that I would like to bust, here and now, because pregnancy in itself is the risk factor for pelvic floor dysfunction. It's that 40 weeks, give or take a few, that places that load and stretches and compromises the muscles and the ligaments of the pelvic floor. So carrying a pregnancy in itself is a risk factor. A C-section will provide pelvic floor protective factors. So for me, having had 2 vaginal deliveries, I was working with a women's health physio and a urogynae for my 3rd delivery, and I was really worried about maybe getting a 3rd or 4th degree tear, which I know would impact recovery. So with my first, it was a 2nd degree. With my second, it was minimal. And then so 3rd time around, everyone's saying the stats say the first baby does the most damage. So C-sections will give pelvic floor protective factors, which eliminates things that are risk factors, like a long pushing stage or a rapid pushing stage, or giving birth to an over 4 kilo baby, or a 3rd or 4th degree tear and episiotomy, forceps, any of those type of things. So it can offer protective factors, but I want women to know that if you elect or if you have to have an emergency, if it goes that way, it is really still important to make sure that you rebuild your base and do that work as well, because the risk factor of pregnancy is a really big one.
I'd never even thought about it. That's amazing, Brooke. Yes, of course.
Yeah. And I think if you haven't gone through that either, you might not think about it, but it often comes up. Some women always say like, oh, if I have a C-section, I'm not at risk. But we also need to understand that, we are the sum, like our pelvic floor is the sum of our experience. So it's not just pregnancy and postpartum that plays a role in it. It's like our genetics and our diet and our toileting habits and our stress management and all of those things as well. So I think if women are going into having pregnancy and exercising, just be aware of the importance of having a functional pelvic floor for the rest of your life, and how that may or may not impact you as well.
Thank you, Brooke. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
That's such great information. And it's just so great to put it out there and to have that comfort as, for pregnant women to feel more confident working out and moving their bodies, because it is so important.
It is, yeah. And yeah, it's for your lifelong athletic journey. It's not just for pregnancy. It's not just, in that acute postpartum stage, but to make sure that you can then move with confidence for the rest of your life, particularly as we go through those hormonal shifts. And maybe you're not symptomatic now, but it doesn't mean that you won't be later. So yeah, we've always got to put in the hard work to make sure that we can move for life.
Absolutely. Thank you, Brooke.
Thank you, Tiff.
Thanks so much for listening to Bounce Forward. I love having your company. So DM me all of your questions at tiffhall_xo and let me know what questions you need me to cover. Don't forget to rate and review me on your podcast app. Speak soon. Happy days.